So all we're going to do on worksheet 8.8 is change from one form to another. There's more than one way to write these radicals that we were writing yesterday. There is a connection with the radicals we were writing yesterday to exponents. This kind of exponents, what does that word rational mean? So right above that word rational, write the word fraction. The definition of rational is a number that can be put into the form a over b, where b is not equal to 0. If it's in the form a over b, it is a fraction. And so rational exponents means fractional exponents. And you will see if you look down your paper, do you see that these exponents are fractions? And all we're going to do is rewrite using a radical, using this rule right here. That's the connection between the exponent that's a fraction and a radical. So in 1a, I'm going to change it to radical notation. This symbol itself is called a radical. And the 36 is going to go under the radical, and the denominator of the exponent becomes the index. That's it. Rewritten. So all we're doing is changing from one form to another, following this rule right here on the top of your paper. Rewrite it in radical form. That's a radical. The y goes underneath. The 3 is the index of the radical. The denominator of the exponent becomes the index. So we're going to rewrite it in radical form. Most of the time, we don't write an index of 2. If the index is 2, most of the time we leave the index off. If the index is not written, it's understood to be an index of 2, which is just your regular square root. We don't write that index because that's the most commonly used index. So, change it to radical form. This is called a radical. The denominator becomes the index. Because this index is an even number, if I tried to simplify it out, this negative would make an I in the simplified answer. But all we're doing right now is changing from one form to another. Example 2a. Radical form has a radical sign. 2x goes right here. The denominator is 5. What about the 4? The 4 is the exponent on the 2x. Still 2x to the 4th power. The 5 denominator makes the index. Now, you could do a little bit more there. What is 2 raised to the 4th power? What's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2? How about 16? So you could write it, either one of those would be a correct answer. You don't have to multiply it out at this point, but you could. This is going to be x squared, y, all of that squared, and this 3 denominator becomes the index. You can write it like that, or you can go ahead and square this out. X squared squared again is x to the 4th power, y squared. So either one of those would be correct answers. This is going to be x to the 7th power, and the index is 2. If the index is 2, you don't have to write the index. You could write the answer without the index if the index is 2. This is going to be 5x to the 5th power. Raise that to the 3rd power, and then 4 becomes the index. You could go ahead and multiply that out. 5 raised to the 3rd power, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. 5 raised to the 3rd power would make a power of 15, and the index would be 4. Either one of those would be correct answers. Depends on what you're going to do with it next, whether you would want to have it in this form or that form. In case you're wondering what's going to be coming next is solving some equations, but not yet. Now, these problems already have a radical in them. So I am going to change them to rational. Rational means fraction. I'm going to change this from a radical sign to a fraction exponent. I am not solving anything at this point. I'm just changing it from one form to an equal form. And so this is going to be 5xy raised to the 1/4 power. I just want to mention this would be incorrect. What's wrong with it? On the second one, does the 1/4 look like a power? Why not? The powers need to be up higher, and if on a test you wrote it like this, it would be counted wrong. The exponents have to look like exponents. So be careful with that. Don't be sloppy. So this is going to be 3xy squared. Index of 3 becomes 1/3 exponent. This is going to be 4a squared b. The index of 5 becomes a 1/5 exponent. Uh-oh, the next one doesn't have an index. If the index is not written, the index is 2. It's a square root. The index is 2. So this is 3xy raised to the 1/2 power. A 1/2 power is the same thing as a square root. To rewrite it using rational exponents, rational means fraction exponents. This is going to be 5xy to the 3rd power, and then the 4 becomes the denominator. So it will become the 3/4 power. This is going to be 3x squared y to the 7th power, and then the 3 index becomes a denominator on my exponent. And then we're going to get to solve something like that. Won't it be so fun? 7a squared b, all of that squared, and the 5 index becomes the denominator. If the index is not written, the index is 2. So this would be 3xy raised to the 6th. The 2 becomes the denominator. But I should not leave that one like that. What is 6 over 2 equal to? You should always reduce your fractions to lowest terms. 6 divides by 2, and so that would be the same as a power of 3. Should always reduce fractions to lowest terms. I don't believe any of my other examples reduce to lowest terms. If the index is not written, the index is 2. So this would be 3xy to the 1/2 power, and all of that's in the denominator. The radical sign is in the denominator. This could also be written 3xy to the negative 1/2 power, because we talked about yesterday that a negative power is the same thing as being in the denominator. So either one of these would be a correct way to write the answer. Got that one? This would be 1 over 2x squared y to the 7 over 6th power. The 6 becomes the denominator. This could also be written 2x squared y to the negative 7 over 6 power, because a negative power is the same thing as being in the denominator. Does it seem fairly easy to switch from one form to another? Because we're going to add just a little bit more to it with this next example. We're going to change to radical notation and simplify. Circle the and simplify part. The and simplify part is what you were doing yesterday on the salmon colored paper. When it says simplify or radical, you need to think birthday cake. That's what it's talking about. First, I'm going to change it to radical form. This is a radical. The 64x to the 5th power goes under the radical. And this 4 becomes the index. The previous instructions just said rewrite. That's all we were doing. This adds something and simplify. So that means I'm going to go down here to my bottom of my problem, and I'm going to write down the 64. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and x to the 5th power, and I am going to make a birthday cake. 2 will go into 6, and 2 will go into 4. 2 will go into 32. 2 will go into 16. There are a lot of 2's in this problem. Because the index is 4, I'm going to make groups of 4. 1, 2, 3, oops. Let me do it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. I have a group of 2 and a group of x's. And what I have left over is a 2 times a 2 times an x. What's left over is 2 times 2 times x, which would make a 4x. Do not leave out the index. The index is 4. This is the answer because I was making groups of 4 because the index was 4. This is converting and then simplifying. The simplifying was the lesson we did yesterday. Convert to radical form. This symbol is called a radical. The index is 3 is from right there. 54x to the 4th power. So down here at the bottom of my problem, 54, 1, 2, 3, 4. Divide by 2. I can't divide by 2. So I divide by 3. Because the index is 3, I make groups of 3. There's a group of 3. There's a group of x. What's left over? There's a 2 down here and an x. 2x is what's left over. That's simplified. First, convert it, 4x, to radical form. The denominator becomes the index. But what is 4 to the 3rd power? You see the parentheses is going all the way around it? That would be 4 times 4 times 4. That is radical notation, and now I am going to simplify. 16. Divide by 2 as long as you possibly can to make a birthday cake. What's the index? Do we know that word? This number right here is the index. So I'm going to make groups of 1, 2, 3, 4. Do I have enough x's to make a group of 4 x's? No. And so the only thing that gets to come out of the radical sign is a 2. So I have 2 times 2 times x times x times x. 2 times 2, 4x to the 3rd power. That is simplified. It doesn't look simple, but that's called the simplified form. Okay. You try the last one. That is the answer for problem D. Show.